Hi, welcome to Questions of Life. This is just a little snippet for you to get an idea of what Questions of Life is all about. We've produced 2 videos on Wednesday night's show, and there's also a podcast as well. So have a look, join with us either at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night, or have a look at our videos, or listen to the podcast. What is a Christian?
I mean, we could spend the next 10 sessions trying to explain the intricacies, but essentially, I think a Christian is fundamentally 2 things, I suppose. Firstly, is somebody who wants to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And that means, that's not that like you follow him on Facebook. It's not that you watch what he's doing. It's that you decide, I want to live the life that he had for me. He has for me. I want to follow him.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about being a disciple, that we're wanting to live a Christ-like life. We want to love our neighbor as ourselves. We want to be kind and compassionate and gracious and generous and merciful. Mm-hmm. So in the one sense, a Christian is someone who says, I want to live and follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Paradoxically, and at the same time, I think a Christian is someone who says, I can't do this without you, Jesus. I can't do this without your help. And I need you in my life. I need you to come into my life. And we believe that God comes in by his Spirit, by his Holy Spirit, and lives within and empowers and equips us. And that by asking Jesus to come into our life, asking him to help us, we find the strength and the power day by day to be that little bit more like Jesus than we were yesterday. We don't become perfect overnight. There's all kinds of stuff that we deal with and God deals with in our lives. But for me, a Christian is someone who wants to follow Jesus. And secondly, is someone who recognizes that they can't do it on their own, that they need him. Now, there's a whole third area. I always get the numbers wrong, but there's a whole third area about who Jesus was and what he was doing when he died and what his resurrection means that perhaps we'll unpack in future times. But essentially, a Christian is someone who says, I want to follow you, Jesus, and I need you in my life.
I remember when I first became a Christian, I started in the Gospels, and even though I'd been brought up in the faith, it was like a revelation to me that I began to get this picture of Jesus. And in my head, I had this weird, white, sandaled man that was just nice. But to begin to grasp his heart, his compassion, his passion for the human race, his ability to forgive, the miracles, just the way that he stood up for the poor, for the oppressed. I'm like, who is this guy at the heart of Christianity? And it kind of brought it to life for me that this isn't about me going to church. This is about this man who lived on this earth, who changed our world and has changed my life. And I didn't understand how he'd changed my life. And in that moment, there was a sense of connection. There was a sense that my life suddenly had some meaning. It had some purpose. And, the word that we use on X Factor, the journey began, if you like. And I began to understand who this Jesus is. And you talk about Jesus being part of your life and the difference that makes. What would you say? So you became a Christian when you were how old?
Well, it's a process between 13 and 15.
Okay.
Yeah. I can remember when it started and I can remember when it ended.
Yeah.
So it was a journey, yeah.
And what was one of the key reasons for that happening?
Yeah, so there were 2 big things for me. The beginning part was that I really grasped the reality of heaven. And I really realized that this life has got a lot of issues and a lot of problems and a lot of decay, really, and I understood the wonder and the beauty of heaven, and that God intended something better than this, and I wanted to go to heaven. It was as simple as that, and I understood.
Not literally then.
Not literally
then,
but I understood that I needed to make my peace with God, that I needed to have a relationship with Jesus. That there was no point heaven just repeating all the mess of this world. Some decisions needed to be made, and I made a decision. I want to be your follower.
Yeah.
I think the next 2 years I kind of grappled with trying to understand what that meant. And then when I was around about 15, I had a very profound experience where I understood that God loved me. And this whole thing about rules, a lot of people's perception of God comes through the Old Testament, comes through all kinds of misconceptions of church and everything. But when you discover Jesus and you realize what he is doing on the cross, and how he treated people, and how he's expressing his love. What happened for me was somebody explained to me why Jesus was dying.
Yeah.
And suddenly I felt this intense experience of knowing that God loved me. And that's what Jesus does. That's why it's not simply a faith in God, it's a faith in Jesus, that it's an understanding that Jesus reveals God to us. Now, not everybody has that kind of experience, and I've only probably ever had that kind of feeling experience once or twice in my life.
Yeah.
And I know some people worry that they never have it, and I don't think that matters at all. Some people's faith is very rational, some people's faith is very intuitive. We're all somewhere on that spectrum. But around about 15, I could understand that God loved me and that Jesus had demonstrated that for me on the cross. That all the stuff in my life that I was ashamed of and felt bad about, and all the things I felt were not good enough, that Jesus took all of that and understood that, and that he loved me. So